All right, welcome to the Cleveland Heights City Council Committee of the Whole meeting. It's January 20th at 6 p.m. Addie, would you call the roll, please?
Cobb.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Bosch.
Here.
Duetfoy.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Kuda.
All right, we're all here. So let's get to it. Legislative agenda. I'll get my glasses on, let's go through this. We have about 30 minutes. So the first ordinance is ordinance 8/2026, an ordinance to amend certain subparagraphs of ordinance 241/2025 related to appropriations and other expenditures for the city. Any questions about that? Yes, go ahead. Vice President Larson.
I did want to raise a point for all of us to keep into consideration as we progress through this new year. I asked Director Caldwell for an end of year balance in the General Fund 101 unencumbered account. And she did what she called a high dive on looking at the figures because they're not quite keeping up with the year end. But she said at the point that she looked at it as 12/31/25, the balance in there is 17.5 million.
She is here.
Oh, there she is. Director Caldwell, we were just talking about the balance in the unencumbered fund.
Yes.
And one of the things that we have been told is that we need to try to keep that balance at 20 million. So we have an agenda item tonight that's asking for $200,000 for the ZOCO. Yeah. Which was, we already authorized the mayor to sign that, go ahead and negotiate that contract, but we did that in December, but I'm looking at that money needs to go because we've already, it just didn't get encumbered, or what was the word you used that?
For the so it didn't get recertified prior to you.
Right, so that's not something we cannot do as far as I'm concerned, but I just want everybody to really keep looking every time we get a monthly report from finance. Make sure you're looking at the balance in that unencumbered fund because we will be asked to fund things that we'll need to keep that in consideration if it has to come from General Fund 101.
I'd like to add that we did have a conservative estimate baked in for our municipal income taxes, and so I think that'll help bridge the gap. But we have some work just to look to see what caused that variance. We had, a large payment at the end of the year that was unanticipated for workers' comp. It's due in advance, and so we had made one payment at the top of the year. However, that was for the prior year, and so we're just going to take a look at some, nuances like that just to see where we were off in our projections.
Thank you. Do you have a timeline for when we'll have year-end financials?
So we are working on those. We hope to get those out this week.
Oh,
in preparation for Monday's finance committee meeting.
great. Thank you.
And Director Caldwell, remind me, the Leopardo payment, it was 3 million, close to it.
So I believe it's 1.7 and we baked in two payments. So it's 1.7 roughly a year and we baked in the next two debt payments.
Okay, and so that was part of the budget, correct?
Yes.
So that's budget. So that 17 point whatever million, that's an unofficial.
Well, it's official. I just need to do a deeper dive into what caused that variance. We were expecting roughly 20 million. And so we came in 2 short. And so, as I just mentioned, there was one payment, workers' compensation, but I'll just take a look to see and we'll have an answer for you on Monday.
And it could possibly be made up by revenues.
For sure, yes.
Once.
Yes, so the revenue, the municipal income tax revenue that was baked in was a conservative estimate. It was short by, I wanna say like 1.5 million. And so we anticipate that revenues will come in higher than what we baked into the budget.
Any other questions? Resolution 9/2026, a resolution confirming mayor's appointment of Helen Hertz and Linda Stravsky is number 10. Those are reappointments. Any questions about those? I'm sorry, that's to the Community Improvement Corporation. 11/2026 is Shamir Kushner as a member of the Planning Commission, and 12 is Matt Carey. Anybody have any questions about those?
Just,
It's really, yeah,
just maybe more of a comment, maybe sort of a question. I mean, we interviewed some really outstanding people for this. I almost wish we had like multiple openings more than the two. And I think there was some desire to see if some of them could be fit into some of our other committees. Did anybody ever have a conversation with the candidates that were not bringing forth?
well, Addie sent an email to them.
Yeah, I sent an email out, whether they were one way or another pick. I did speak with Wendy, about potentially applying for the CAC, but I haven't spoken to anyone else.
But in the email, didn't it say?
We'll keep your
Yeah,
application on file, but
Well, I mean, for the record, if anybody's watching and if they've seen that, I mean, we had outstanding candidates. I wish we had more positions open for the number of candidates that we had. It was a hard choice.
Yeah, it's a great problem to have, yeah.
You know, I've noticed that all of this legislation filling these vacancies has me as the introducing member. Sometimes it appears as if I'm the one making these selections and I'm not. These are all council selections. So I think going forward, I would have this introduced by all of the council members that support anyone's appointment rather than just me.
you're only that way because you're chair, but yes, we can do that.
So you're thinking if they turn out to be bad appointments, you don't want all the blame either.
That never happens. We only make good appointments.
course.
But I've had some people reach out to me and I'm like, no, these are collectively city council decisions.
Thank you for that, and we can do that. 13/2026 is the reappointments. This is to the CAC, I'm sorry, Citizens Advisory Committee. So I don't use acronyms. Cindy Carroll Pankhurst, I'm sorry, David Benson, Laura Black, Cindy Carroll Pankhurst, Sudine Dyke, Susan Ephraimson, Casey Friedland, Jonathan Goldman, Leslie Jones, Mara Lacan, Adam May, Hilly Massey, Aaron Miller Tate, Rachel Moore, Sarah Lean Oakley Toombs, Lorna Rudolph, Darius Smith, Patty Substelny, and Darlene White. Number 14/2026 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Green Home Solutions for certified lead abatement. Any questions about that? 15/2026, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Sosic Painting and Remodeling, certified lead abatement contractor using LSO grant funds. 16/2026, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with American Builders and Applicators LLC, a certified lead abatement contractor. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to ask Director Butler, since you're here. This grant that we're using, the LSO grant, do we have a balance in terms of how much we have left or?
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of these coming before you with a higher amount than typical. And the balances are we're trying to end these grants the end of this month.
Okay,
We may have an extension for another month,
okay,
but the Lead Safe Ohio grant that we got through the state of Ohio and through the county Board of Health are ending soon, so we're wrapping those up. And there is another grant, NOAA, that we're likely we've applied for with the Board of Health, and we'll likely get that. It's looking to be like a 4-year kind of grant. So
Thank you.
we're rolling them out, and
I know,
yeah, we're spending the money so we don't have to give it back,
it was good to see though,
for sure.
absolutely, thank you, Xavier.
Other questions? 17/2026, a resolution declaring the fire damaged property at 3631 Randolph be a nuisance. Yes,
So if you look at some of the dates, I mean, it seems like this has been going on for a long time with this particular parcel. And I know that there's a due process. I mean, we have to be fair, follow all the due process, but is there any way that we can shorten the cycle that it takes in order to get to this?
Yeah, so in a lot of these cases, or if I could bring these fire damaged properties that typically the ones that are in trouble are the ones that don't have insurance. So we have to follow, try to see if the owners have the funds, if they're gonna make repairs. And like you said, I wanna give due process, but I think, this one's a little bit long in the timeframe. There's some extenuating circumstances around the whole scenario. This email was quite lengthy. So I would agree that this is probably longer than I wanted to have it before council as well. And we have some changes in our staffing with the chief inspector. He's on top of the fire damage structures. That's typically what's gonna come before you. Probably be bringing some other nuisance abatement properties for removal of debris and storage and clutter. So you'll see, hopefully you'll see some of those coming up soon.
when arson is alleged, what does that do for the timeline?
I would just say it makes it more complicated for fire investigations to find the cause. We wanna make sure we know what the cause is, if there's something wrong with it, where it was. The key for me is where's the funds that are gonna either fix it or demo it, and does the owner have the wherewithal to do that? And you wanna make sure that all those avenues are exhausted before we move forward.
And is the $25,000 in the legislation an estimate of,
That's correct.
and where would that money come from?
That'll be from likely block grant nuisance abatement.
Okay,
And in this scenario, with the change in mayor recently, we've added some different members to the nuisance abatement board of review. So that's probably gonna be a good start. I'm anticipating that this would be appealed. So, that's, we wanna have everything in place before we start some, process that we're not ready for.
Yeah, that, I wanted to follow up on timing, but from the approval of the nuisance legislation, because I'd asked some follow-up questions over email, which you kindly answered, but it looks like you had said that there will be a 30-day order to abate the nuisance, and then you said that it's likely the property owner will appeal. So what is the estimated timeline from approving nuisance legislation to actual demolition?
So I think there's a couple different numbers or dates in the ordinance. Typically, when it's approved by council, I believe it's 30 days. But the appeal itself in any other nuisance says 14 days to the director of law. So to make sure my dates are correct in that, and if we don't have an appeal in a timely manner, then we'll move forward with the, with the abatement of the nuisance.
And what does the board take into account when it considers an appeal?
It's basically a legal, presentation. We would present a case to the board to say why it's a nuisance, and then the defendant would have the appellant would have their case too, why they think it's not, and likely what's the plan for the, the abatement of it or correction of the issues.
So it sounds like there's two possible outcomes. One is that it is deemed a nuisance and the city continues its process, and the other is that the property owner has an agreed upon plan for rectifying the violation.
Correct, if it's satisfactory to the appeal board.
To the board, right?
Right.
Okay.
We've, in some past instances, there have been some issues with the ruling that the appeal board stated. So it's nice to have, some a little bit of history and all the facts when you're looking through it. So So hopefully this will be a good one to start with and we'll see where we go.
Are you able to send us, following the meeting, the members, the current members or the anticipated members of the review board? So we can have it.
Yeah, so I think we have them, but it may have changed with Mayor Petrus elected. We had them prior to, so yeah, I could let everyone know who they are.
Thank you, appreciate that.
There has been a council representative on, generally the chair of the Public and Safety Committee has been on it in prior years. I don't know if that's changed, just so you know, there's some council representation on it.
18/2026, a resolution authorizing a second amendment to the consulting contract between the City of Cleveland Heights and AISLINN. That's Unetics thing, okay. So this is extending Unetics contract with, yeah.
I did ask Director Caldwell where the funds are for this contract. And it's coming out of the budgeted finance management consultant contract account, so this is a budgeted item.
Thank you. I just want to say, Andy Unetic really showed up at a critical time and is doing critical work for us, and I think it's been good for all concerned.
I agree.
Mr. President?
yes.
If I might, just to jump back to Councilwoman Cohen's question about the nuisance abatement board of review. That's created by the ordinance in 55302, and it's the chairperson of the Public Safety and Health Committee of Council or other member of council appointed by the president, the mayor or the mayor's designee, and a member of the city's Department of Community Relations appointed by the mayor. I don't actually know, I don't recall who those people were, but it's largely kind of ex officio or appointed by the mayor or president of council. And to the to Alan Butler's point, there's 14 days to appeal an order of nuisance abatement, and then after that's received, there's a 7-day period before you can move forward with hearings and so forth. And there is a standard built into the appeal procedure, which is that a written decision will not be found against an owner of a rental property, who establishes by a preponderance of the evidence that they had no knowledge of the nuisance activities on the premises and couldn't have known of it. And then upon receipt of notice of the occurrence of nuisance activities, they promptly took all actions necessary to abate. So there are some standards and guidelines as to how the board should conduct its review.
Thank you so much.
So everything I just read was for passage tonight. This is for first reading only. 21/2026, a resolution authorizing, yeah. I skipped a page.
19 and 20.
We did 18, we need to go to 19.
I did, okay. So these are two more for passage tonight. 19/2026, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to renovate the skate park and the tennis courts at Keene Park. Questions? Yes.
I don't have any opposition to the legislation before us on this, but I want to note that this is the type of project that we currently, in our review boards, there is no authority to review and approve or disapprove substantial changes to parks, which this would do. The Planning Commission in the code right now only has the authority to review, but no authority to approve or disapprove, which is an issue that I brought up last July as chair of the Planning Commission, and I hope we'll talk about on the
And that's the
legislative
memo
agenda.
you sent out.
Yes,
Okay.
and so that I just want to put this as one example where this is a $390,000 park change that the
Yeah.
administration, although well served now, will be able to do without any sort of body approving past the funding.
So let me ask the law director, what will we need to do? Will we need to change anything to make the process include the planning commission?
Yes.
And
Which is what I said, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go, I want to go back and refer to the communication, but you would wanna figure out if it's planning commission, in a number of communities, it's a park board or something along those lines that deals with those issues, but the council has the authority. There's nothing in the charter, to my knowledge, that would restrict council placing that authority where it chooses to do so.
I think we probably need to have some more discussion about that. I mean, I'm curious on the why, but then I sort of reflect back at Dennison in a shipping container that was gonna get put there that I'm not sure anybody really wanted.
Well, we didn't even know about it. That was, I mean, yeah,
Well, I guess that's the point. I mean, there's a lot of frankly great work that our staff has done in order to secure that kind of grant and do the work to make it all happen. I mean, which is pretty spectacular work. But it would be helpful in the process if we have, I don't wanna say some input, but at least some presentation so we sort of know what's going on. Because we get questions about it.
Is that the only exception to planning commission's review authority?
So I don't have the code in front of me right now like I did when I sent that email, but the planning commission has approval and disapproval of conditional use permits. But when it comes to the park provision, it's substantial, only has the review authority, whereas the language for conditional use permits is review, approval, and disapproval. And so that's the inconsistency, and we can talk about this more at the president, council president's discretion, but the impetus for this was the Keene Park design with the steps and the ramp, which we had seen planning commission got a preview for a review, and then what we were shown was completely different from how the project was executed. Planning commission was not allowed to have any input. Council did not have any practical input aside from funding. And putting it in the plan, like my contention would be putting it in a planning commission for approval or disapproval, puts it on a public docket, requires the public hearing within a public planning commission meeting, and allows council to have input via the normal planning commission process if they so choose.
I really appreciate your eye on this because that's a missing link.
It's a loophole, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know anybody on council that didn't think that was leapfrogged. And, we wanna have a process in place where we can say we really did our due diligence other than say, yeah, go ahead. 2020-26, a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice through Rural and Small Department Violent Crime Reduction Program, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Ganley Ford for the purchase of 3 vehicles? 4. It is 4 vehicles, okay. Wanted to make sure. And their utility hybrid police vehicle interceptors. So, go ahead, Vice President.
Chief Britton, thank you for answering all my questions. I did want to ask you, I have 2 questions, one for you and one for President Kuda, actually. That looks like the expiration date for this grant is September 30 of 2026. So will the cars be in place and be the funding spent on the uplifting and the additional equipment be completed before this end date so that we keep these funds here in Cleveland Heights?
Yes, ma'am, and to everyone here. So just so you know, Lieutenant Corrigan's been working diligently and relentlessly on this, and in the very near future, you'll see the legislation for the purchase of the equipment to finish the outfitting.
Thank you. But how long is it gonna take for those cruisers to come in so you can outfit them?
That's a very good question. I wish I could get you a direct answer, but like I said, the orders there, and usually the turnaround time's pretty good within several weeks.
Okay, thank you. Now, because this is really a program that's important to many in the community, President Kuda, will you please allow some time during a future committee of the whole or regular council meeting for a presentation from the police department on how the juvenile violence diversion program is administered at Heights High Baumgartner and Roxborough middle schools and any data available on the program's success. I'd really like to hear more about it.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. And, although this grant was, sitting around for a while, I'm glad that the department and especially Chief and Lieutenant Corrigan found a place for this, but we should get that,
Thank you.
that connection. So when would you like to?
When they would be ready, I wouldn't want to put that on me because it would take a little bit of preparation probably.
Okay.
But maybe second meeting in February if possible? Is that too soon?
I'll get to work on it right away and I will certainly let you know if we can have it accomplished by then.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
All right, other questions?
President,
Yes, please.
is this the grant that we received several years ago that somehow fell through the cracks and the administration at that time wasn't able to find
So we had two grants. One was this grant and one was another grant for $175,000. We lost that grant. It was for youth
services?
services. And,
It was a joint grant.
we lost that well over a year ago. This one, we were in danger of losing, but it's not the one we lost.
I am so happy you were able to save this, okay? I mean, it was so disappointing to find out that we weren't able to use those initial monies. So
Yeah.
if this was a save, I mean, this is, I know things weren't quite right until the first of the year, but this is perfect.
All right, to 21-2026, this is first reading only, a resolution authorizing the city to participate in the NOPEC Green Community Choice Program for the city's electricity aggregation program starting June 2026. We have Tony from NOPEC here. Raise your hand. There you go. So questions for Tony? There we go.
Yes, ma'am.
It looks to me, Tony, that we had last time we did this agreement between the city was in 2023. And so is this a renewal of that same agreement?
Yes, so you were among the first inaugural set of communities that participated as green community choice communities. You get one. Sure. You were among the first set of communities that participated in this. We later this year, every 3 years required by the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, NOPEC has to notify everyone that's eligible to participate in the electric aggregation program that they can participate or opt out. That process is going to happen later this year. So beginning in mid-April, we will start mailing letters to over 700,000 electric customers throughout our 251 community footprint, including your city. So now is the opportunity to either make a decision as to whether Cleveland Heights wants to continue to be a green community choice community or essentially not, just kind of revert back to what the standard program offer is. But I will tell you, this program is extremely successful in your community. And to create a little competition with a West Side neighbor, you're only eked out slightly by the city of Lakewood in terms of participation in this program. And forgive me, I forget who has the higher population. It may be just by default.
They are slightly.
Okay, just maybe by default, but these numbers are from December. You have 12,320 active accounts under your electric aggregation program. Of those, 98% participate in the Green Community Choice Program. So about a little over 11,000, and then 98% of your eligible commercial small business accounts participate. The other 2% are still part of the aggregation program. They're just not, they're taking advantage of other pricing options we have. When the city originally adopted this program 3 years ago, the incremental cost to become a Green Community Choice Program community, say that 5 times fast, the cost was pretty significant in terms of, say, I'll use the city of Richmond Heights as an example. At the time, they weren't one. Their electric rates comparatively to yours, you could see on a piece of paper the difference. You all still chose to take that step, which is really good. What's nice about this renewal is NOPEC, in partnership with our supply partner NextEra, we just renewed a contract with them. We were able to negotiate significant reductions in this program. So the first flyer you'll see in your in the packet that I gave you was the Green Community Choice, shows that the incremental cost is 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour. So for your average residential user here in the city, it's $1.75 potentially extra a month on their electric bill. This is significantly less than what it was several years ago. So we're very excited about that renewing essentially really is a very small incremental cost. What's also nice though is a resident does not have to participate in Green Community Choice. When they get their enrollment letters later this year, it'll tell them that this is the default option, but that they don't have to select it. They can choose a variety of other pricing options that we pause there.
So wait, just so I understand this, everybody defaults to NOPEC if you don't do anything, right?
In your community, everybody would default to the Green Community Choice option.
Right.
Unless they opt out of the aggregation program, or they call us and say, I wanna stay with NOPEC, I just don't wanna pay extra for green energy.
I see.
And then they would just default to what we call our standard program rate. Yes.
So where does, since this is an incremental cost for those who don't opt out, what are the benefits of us entering into the Green Community Choice program?
What are the benefits of continuing to stay?
Okay,
Your electricity used here in the city are backed by 100% renewable energy credits, which each year we retire for you and provide a report to the city as to how many RECs were retired. That's beneficial to you if the city has climate action goals, which I know you do. These help contribute to carbon reduction emissions and help you reach those goals faster. Your neighbor South Euclid is a participant. I mentioned Richmond Heights. They recently just adopted this program. Lakewood, Olmsted Township is a new member, and Sheffield Village in Lorain County also has this program. Did that answer your question?
I think so. I'm just wondering, it
I'm here to
sounds
be
like it's a bit of an
confusing, not-
esoteric. No, go ahead.
Do you have a rate yet?
No, we don't. So we will have those rates here mid-February
Okay.
because we have to start printing and folding and licking envelopes here pretty soon, so. Yeah, but we will have that, and that will be shared. That should come through Andy once we have that information. We'll flow that through Andy to Floaty.
And so just to follow up on President Kuda's question, so can residents also opt out of NOPEC completely?
Absolutely.
Okay, they can choose their own, so this does not require them to.
No, and that's the beauty, that's one of the things we like to share is as well, the community has chosen to aggregate it. We do your gas program too. A resident can opt out at any time. It doesn't cost them to opt out. There are no exit fees. NOPEC doesn't charge monthly fees. We publish our rates. Those what the rate options are. There's no penalty of leaving. And then if a resident does leave from your electric program, say in 6 weeks they're gonna come back, they can come back. In a couple of weeks, we may talk about how we can make the gas program a little bit better, but I'll wait for the admin to bring that to you. Yes, sir.
Can you provide what types of generation qualify for the RECs? And if you have this information about what percentage Clinton Heights typically pulls of each
That's a really good
generation.
question, and I would ask for that question in writing so I could get an answer from you from the technical folks. All of the renewable that we get from NextEra is wind and solar. I think there's some hydro in there. I would have to confirm if any of that is nuclear. I don't think it's nuclear. I think it's just the other option.
Okay.
Yes.
I just had a question about the annual grants that we're awarded. How does this tie back, if at all, is participation and the grants the amount that we're awarded based on participation in this program?
Correct. So NOPEC has what we call our NOPEC Energized Community Grant Program. Those funds flow back to our communities. Those are negotiated with our supplier. And very, very high level. Instead of NextEra, say, coming into the Ohio market and trying to market, solicit, and door knock and get customers, essentially working with us, we say, here's a pool of customers. Because they don't have to spend a ton of money on advertising, we've negotiated in our contract that cost savings, we get some of that money. So I always like to clarify, people think that their rates are inflated so that the city can get grant money. Those are separate dollars, the residents do not pay for those grant funds. Those grant funds are based though on participation. So the more residents that participate in the program, the higher those funds are. You all got your grant dollars last year. You tend to be one of the higher tier communities in terms of the amount of money that you receive based on that. I think you're like in the top 5% based on your community size and participation. The other items I brought you for those of you that are new, and just as a refresher to those of you who have been here a little while, the first brochure explains who we are and what we do for your community. The second brochure talks about a new program that we created. As you're out talking to your small businesses here in the city, we are now able to negotiate on behalf of those small businesses separate from the aggregation if they're too big. The brochure explains it, I won't bore you. And then there's just some other supplemental materials to talk about who we are and what we do and maybe help you answer questions to your constituents.
Thank you. Any other questions? Tony, thank you.
My pleasure, thank you, I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Tony.
Director Schatz, how do we communicate this to the public?
Probably the best route would be through city news that it's coming up. We could start communicating in the next couple weeks if they should be seen.
And the options, you know, just for people.
And I can provide you, I'll give you a business card, we have a bunch of stuff that's already prepackaged.
That would be great, thank you.
All right, second readings, resolution 4/2025, a resolution authorizing mayor to execute agreement with Farnham Equipment Company through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program for the provision, installation of, and related construction services for improvement of new seating for the community center's main gymnasium. So we're getting rid of the hard bleachers. Oh, he's not here. But anyway, okay. So any questions about that? Not sure who we would ask, but all right, and then we have lastly the consent agenda. Two items, 22-26 is Black History Month and 23-26 is National Donor Day.
What type of donor?
It's organ
Organ
donor
donor,
or
oh,
blood
okay.
donor,
That's
they
okay.
kind of put it into one now.
Thank you.
A big thing in the Orthodox community.
No, I hear donor, I thought donating money
No.
for fundraising first, I said, well, who's donating and to where, so.
That's it for legislative review. We're gonna skip the ARPA update because, but we'll have it next month. Ryan Iorio was not here, and who else would need to be here?
That's it.
Okay, well, we can't do anything without Brian. Alright, so let's move on to CDBG. We have a presentation from Mr. Jones and Fallon is here from the planning department.
Your Fallon's gonna pass out our final recommendations. I'll just briefly go through our process and how we came to our conclusions this year. Welcome, everybody. I'll give you a little anecdote. If you think it's cold here, try living in Montana for 3 years. I was in Montana for 3 years. Minus 55.
Oh my God.
Was as cold as you got.
Thank you.
I've lived through that, so you can do it too.
It's a dry cold.
It's a dry cold, that's right.
It's a dry
cold. Yeah, snow never melts. Welcome everybody. I'm Les Jones. I'm the current chair of the CAC, Citizens Advisory Committee. And I'm making my first presentation here to go over our year 52 Community Development Block Grant suggestions for funding. Our board meets around 14 to 15 times a year. We then go into subcommittee work as well to make our final recommendations. We spend the first part of the year keeping up with the spending of last year's money. We also make sure that any of the money that's not spent, we start asking questions, why? How long is it gonna take to spend it? You know, those kind of things. And then in the June timeframe, we wait for the new grants to come in. And this year, we got 33 grant applications by June 30th. After that, those grant applications, as we totaled them up, were for $2.682 million, which was over $1 million higher than what we spent last year. So we knew we were gonna have an issue with whether we could fund any new programs and if we could meet any of the higher level asks for the programs that were submitted this year. We spent a little bit of time looking at whether we had any other options to gain any additional money, or whether any other pots of money out there that might be able to contribute to the shortfall. And we reviewed those issues with Brian and Fallon here to see if there was any open areas where we were expecting money to roll over to this year that possibly wasn't spent out of last year's funds. Then we get into the negotiation part. After we review each of the applications that are submitted with our full committee, we then ask each of the applicants to come in and give us a short presentation on their request. And typically at that time, we don't get into a lot of in-depth questions. We ask them a few general questions about what if you do if you don't get the money, things like that, but we don't ask them any in-depth questions. We're trying to get so many people in so fast that we save those questions, any other in-depth questions for the subcommittee work. And we spend we spent pretty much all of August doing that. We have 2 main sessions where about 8 to 10 of the applicants come in each time and give us their short presentation. And then after they're done, the subcommittees break out and then we handle all of the additional requests that come in for questions. And then those committees then get together, set up separate meetings with each applicant. And then we usually have those meetings primarily at their locations with any other staff members that they want to have on hand. Once we've done that, the subcommittees get together in their own groups and decide whether or not they agree with the request being legitimate. And if they would recommend whether they get the same amount of money, more money, or get their money cut. One of the key questions we typically ask when we're in those committees is that if you don't get the money, what would you do? Do you have any other options for fundraising in other ways? And over the last couple of years, how much ARPA money did you get?
Boy.
Because we want to know that either that money is being funneled toward these same programs or other programs, and if any of it can be diverted to these programs if needed, and to see what they're open about. And then we also ask them whether or not they're willing to give back some of their CBE run funds in case we need to divvy up some money for some other groups that may be short. And in some cases, they will say, well, I could give up $5,000. They, even if they ask for more, they say I could give back $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. And we keep that in mind when we finally do our final deliberations. So this year, with the 33 grants, 2 were new. And when we met with those groups, and I happen to be in the subcommittee with those particular groups, we told them up front that we didn't expect any additional money coming in this year. We were pretty much locked into the 1.56 we had last year. And unless we saw some openings, it was going to be very hard to fund those new programs over existing programs unless some of those people were ready to drop their money out of the bucket or they had ARPA money that was going to cover their shortfall. So with that, we went ahead and started doing our final roll-up of costs of who we could give what and get to 1.56. And based on that, we played a little games on the margins and take 2,000 from here and add it over here or whatever else. But basically, we stayed right at the 1.56 that we're expecting to get from the federal government this year. And then the two new programs, even though we thought they were worthy candidates for some money, they totaled up to almost another $500,000 that we just didn't have. So there was just no way we could fund any money toward their direction that would make any difference in getting those programs off the ground. If you'd like to know, one was from Future Heights for the new housing start they're working on in the Kane Park, Coventry area. And they asked for $100,000, but they had already had ARPA money and they'd already been working on 3 homes already with that ARPA money. And they were open to looking at other revenue streams to get some of that additional money if they did not get money from this fund. The other was a program in the Noble area to rehabilitate a apartment building for senior living. That program we felt was too early to be asking for the money because they still had a lot of hurdles to get over to get approvals from not only the businesses around there, but also city council approving, giving them that building and approving the ability to go ahead and start remodeling it. So we felt that they were a little bit too premature to try to fund that exercise. And I think they wanted $440,000, so we just weren't able to come up with that kind of money this year. And we thought it was premature to give them a little bit of startup money when they weren't guaranteed to even get to phase 2 of getting the building secured through council and getting approval from some of the residents, not some of the businesses around there that also needed to approve the work being done and buying into the program too. So we decided not to do that, and maybe by next year we can take a look at whether we can get them their money or not. So we ended up with the report I gave you right at the 5.62 that we spent last year. Hopefully we'll get that much out of the government again, which we never know how that budget may go. But we based our final recommendations on getting the exact same amount of money you had in year 51. And you're open to make any suggestions or approvals or ask me any questions about anything else.
And I do wanna add also that the administration, our recommendations were very similar to the CAC recommendations. But once we came together, we had no issue with the recommendations and decided to follow suit with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Again, all the programs were worthy. It's just that without any increases in funding this year, we had very few options to, other than play with little $1,000 here or there funding to make any difference. So basically, everybody that requested money got what they got last year within a couple $1,000.
I have a question. Fair housing, I see they're getting 40,000. I know Heights Community Congress used to do that activity.
Right.
Who actually does it now?
I think you have a contract with the county organization that handles fair housing. And you pay them. I'm pretty sure that's the way it worked. I was on the board of Heights Community Congress for 30 years. And we had some conversations with them about when the switchover happened, how they were gonna still get fair housing work done. And I think they just transferred the money that Heights Congress was getting, and now it gets funded to them. And then they do it on a countywide basis, but they are dedicated to do so many of the same types of things that Heights Congress did with auditing and tracking the requests and everything else that the Congress was doing.
Go ahead.
I have a few questions. Maybe this one is for the administration. What is the expected outlook on receiving the funds from HUD? Has there been any indication that there's gonna be issues with CDBG funding?
Well, there's a lot of consternation about it across the
Yeah, I know
country.
there are.
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, is doing the same assumption, which is that last year's numbers are sort of what to expect. CDBG is a bipartisan thing across the country, so most communities and most people are for it, whether they're on either side of the aisle.
We did have one issue that I'd like to bring up. There was a question about why CDBG funds were being used for part of the salary of the Office of Aging Specialist. Because our committee collectively thought that that funding should be part of the city budget and not subject to the ups and downs of grant funding, because they felt that the Office of Aging was so important that that person's position should be permanent and not have to worry about getting grant money approved every year to keep that salary going. So we said we would raise that issue when we got in front of council, and that's what I'm doing.
Keep going.
And then, so I guess if we received less, was there a discussion among the CAC or the administration as to how there's gonna be across the board certain percentage cut, or if we will have to go back and reevaluate the entire allocation? Is there any discussion about that?
We have that discussion every year. If you don't get exactly what you want, whether we'll do just the even across the board, we'd rather pick and choose. You know, in some cases, some of the grant applicants have a little more leeway or options to get funding other ways. And so we'd rather wait till that happens, and then we will go back and reevaluate whether we need to take $1,000 here and put it over here or whatever, depending on how bad the cuts were. If they're severe, then we got a big problem.
And then just one or two other questions. The Forest City Community Land Trust that's listed here with a recommendation of $50,000, will this be the first time that the city is giving them money, and what is the intent for them to use it?
I believe that money was transferred from a different program under that new name. I believe, I don't have my exact notes here from that, but I believe it was, because we didn't give out any new money. We just used transfers of money that might have been in a different bucket last year and then went to a new title bucket and then just transferred the money that way. I'd have to go back and get the actual final report. We've got individual committee, subcommittee reports on every single applicant. And that has the detail on why the society transferred.
So yeah, that is a new applicant of ours, and I can follow up and send that subcommittee report to give you more information about them.
Yeah, and I would appreciate that, I think, for the Parks and Recreation accessibility improvements also.
Okay.
And
Just
then,
on the,
yeah.
the CLT, so that's in the DeSoto area, and along Compton Road, there's a number of vacant parcels, city-owned parcels. And for many years, there's been discussion about converting at least one of those spaces to green space, hence the Compton Road Greenway. And so this is a neighborhood organization that would put a bench and things like that. But Fallon will get to the details further on the application.
And then my last question is that the storefront, I see the storefront renovation program is here. Is this the only source of funds for the storefront renovation program? And are we seeing, aside from the Mayfield use of it, are we seeing use of this program?
Yeah, Fallon can speak to the use of it, but it's balanced by Fund 411, which is economic development. There's a storefront component to that, so it's funded in two different ways.
So this supplements what's in the
Yeah, and the program is very popular. I can say that so far over the last year, we have so many applicants and people that are just interested in it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So this is related, or at least in my brain it is, so maybe someone from the administration can maybe fact check and help, but you know, I've read in the news that the city of Columbus is losing its federal funding. Because I think they've labeled themselves as a sanctuary city. I am just curious if that is correct, and would they be losing this kind of money if that indeed was correct? Is there anybody that, I mean, I'm not looking for an answer this minute, but is there anybody?
Well, I'll just postulate that for those communities where you see in the news, you know, the administration has canceled their federal funding. Those tend to be funds that were more discretionary of the administration, but since this is federally appropriated through committees and ultimately the Senate and the House of Representatives, it's less at risk because it would have to be unraveled through Congress as opposed to the administration itself.
I guess I'll just counter that by saying there's been plenty of congressionally appropriated funding that's been pulled back or just canceled, you know, the federal government. So I don't wanna be the arbiter of doom, but I don't think that's any real assurance in the current federal.
We just have like 3 minutes left, go ahead.
Last year, we were given a book that had all of their applications in it. Do you have that electronically?
Yeah, we do.
Can you send that to all of City Council? And when do you expect us to vote on this?
Well, there's no urgency because we don't award the money. They don't start using this cycle's money until June or July. Right, so they're still working off of last year's appropriations right now. And so we're still tracking to see if they're gonna spend it all, you know, as well too. That's another thing. Whether there's going to be programs that get carried over or the funding that will come back because they weren't able to spend it for some legitimate reason.
And then when is this for their 2027 budgets?
Right, this will be for, it's kind of like fiscal year. So July 1st to next June would be the period of time this would be allocated and spent for them to use.
And I know you questioned them all about ARPA and Home Repair Resource Center is collectively getting 41% of all of these funds. Is that because the ARPA dollars that we allocated for a lot of the programs that it appears have some overlap here, that money is anticipated to be spent?
Well, they also make revenue from their money because they're able to restore houses and sell them and get money back. And some of it is part of their loan programs to residents as well and what they get. Before we met with them, we met with Alan here and he along with us felt that they do an excellent job of keeping him on track with what they're doing so that there's minimal overlap of trying to spend the same monies on the same kinds of neighborhoods and projects and whatever. And that they do an excellent job of doing that, as well as getting the money out into the community as fast as possible. So their ARPA monies were for different programs, not ones that they have been requesting money for over the year. But they work in tandem in some cases, and we felt that they were worth, but they also were one of the groups that gave us back some dollars for some of the areas where they were asking for more, so we could divvy that money out to others where we had shortfalls.
Next question.
That's all I have.
I just have a comment. Having been on CAC for 3 years and know how much work that you put into preparing these, this 3 pages doesn't begin to symbolize what the work was done. So thank you, and I'm very happy, especially the public service activities, to see them. They don't get COLAs necessarily, but their amounts awarded have increased over the years, especially the food centers, which were always important to everyone on that committee, that the people in our neighborhoods get the food that they need to have. And these, the 2 that are on this list are extremely crucial to that. So thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
And typically, we've introduced the legislation at the end of May, but signs.
All right, next we're gonna talk about council initiated legislation. We have about 20 minutes for this. We did have a meeting on February 7th where we talked about the process we use, we don't wanna send anything to the law department unless we have some kind of consensus in committee of the whole that a majority of council members would look favorably on the legislation, so who would like to start? Nobody, okay, on to the next now. All right, Jessica.
Well, just a continuation of where I started.
Yeah.
I think that given the amount of the fact that Cumberland Pool needs help, that we have a lot of our parks that are gonna be having substantial changes. I would like to see that in terms of legislative agenda be sooner rather than later to explore that code change for planning commission approval, disapproval. So I'm happy to take direction as to how we get that moving, but if it makes sense to start it in the planning and development committee.
I can say that I mean, you know, certainly we could have a discussion in committee first.
Or we can.
But I mean, if there's a consensus here that we need to do this, I think it would be good for the administration, you know, if we did this sooner than later, just so the playing field is where it needs to be. And I mean, we've already talked about it. Is there any objection to Councilwoman Cohen moving forward with the law department on this legislation?
No objection.
Okay. Anything else on your, what looks like a crowded list?
Well, this was your list from the
Oh,
last meeting. I was
okay.
taking notes on, this is my list and the memo that I sent to all of you, which I think has, you know, year-long goals and objectives. I think the other thing, the other big piece that I wanna look at, which is not a priority like snow removal, but is something that we should start exploring, is our notice requirements. This was something that I've often asked about while I was on planning commission, because we were hearing from members of the community that they don't get information. I believe in the charter, we have specific notice. There's a notice provision, but we don't have necessarily any required electronic notice, meaning it's very nice that the communications department puts things in the email newsletter, but I still think we are on analog where we have to either print in the paper or we have to provide some sort of written notice. And so that's just something I want to explore because I've been bringing that up for years in planning commission. And again, no predetermined objective. I just want to look at it from a 2026, how people get their information
So notice for what?
meeting, everything.
So everything, wow.
Wholesale notice, because I think we're dated.
I mean, we certainly can talk with you about that, would be happy to do that. Some changes have been made in recent years, like the publication of legislation, which used to have to go to the Sun Press and became expensive and time consuming for Addie, and that's now done through the website in most cases, pursuant to legislation that we adopted. But I think with notices for different things that the city issues notices for, there's good reason to look at how that can be made more modern.
And the other thing, you know, legislatively, obviously the the planning department is gonna be undertaking this consultant effort. And so I'm looking forward to shepherding whatever is needed for council as we digest that and then think about what zoning code changes we want to pursue over the coming year.
So where are we at as far as getting that consultant in place and then, you know, what's the timeline for getting?
So the consultant's in place, we need the budget amendment tonight to be able to open the PO and then.
So let's just say it happens, you know.
It happens, so we've already really had a kickoff. They're getting their time frame together, but I wanted to take this opportunity, one of the things that we put in the RFP and was key to our selection of this team was to have a meeting early on with council to determine, first of all, you know, to confirm the scope of what they're gonna be looking at and then to look at the expectations for community engagement. Because this is going to be controversial, it's zoning, it's gonna be hard for people to understand. So we wanna make sure that it's also reasonable, that we don't have 500 meetings, but maybe a certain amount that makes sense. So we wanna just get everybody on the same page in terms of what the expectations are. So I think next month I can give you an update as to when we should have that discussion, which I think should happen in February, but I'll know more information after we truly kick off with them.
Okay.
This may be a question for the law director. Under what circumstances can we go into executive session to discuss issues surrounding the redevelopment of Severance and the proposed zoning changes?
Under the existing set of circumstances, very limited. Be happy to talk with you further, but the ability of the council to turn into executive session is going to be governed by the Ohio Revised Code and the city's ordinance, which incorporates that. And off the top of my head, I think there are limited bases at the moment to go into executive session, but that could change in a number of ways.
Yes.
In addition to the items I added when I had that opportunity the last time, which I'm assuming that Addie noted, which was talking about completing green streets, whether we'll get that through or not, the ranked choice voting, the short-term rental legislation, penalty aspect of rental housing inspections, deer management program. I also wanted to add that I hope to continue working with Directors Klingscale and Butler regarding sidewalk repair programs when streets are in low to mod income neighborhoods are being resurfaced. That was something that the three of us talked about. And I wanna, after walking down through my neighborhood this last week, I wanna restart conversations about snow removal on citywide sidewalks. There are things we could do, different things we could do, some less costly than others, but this is not good. Our sidewalks are in really bad shape for people and children who need to get to school. So I'm gonna have to bring that back up again.
Any other legislative initiatives?
And the only other thing was the training, which we decided wasn't legislative, but the Open Meetings Act trainings. That's my list, sorry.
Right. And then we wanna plan the retreat as well. I mean, that's not legislative.
Right.
But Councilman?
Yeah, so priorities that I'd like to see more progress on broadly involve improving safety for all road users on our streets and roads. Council has previously passed the active transportation plan and the comprehensive and equitable safety action plan, so there's not necessarily new legislation there, but it's more about ensuring and prioritizing the implementation of that. So that may look more like just budget allocations moving forward in 27 and years beyond. So I don't know necessarily if there's like a legislative priority there, but in terms of working with the administration and others on prioritizing implementation there. I did have a conversation with the mayor where we talked about potentially some sort of Vision Zero working group. So what currently exists is we have a complete and green streets ordinance and we have a Vision Zero ordinance where we sort of lay out the goal of moving towards zero road deaths and serious injuries. What we don't have is necessarily the ongoing assessment, review, reporting on how we are making progress towards that goal that we have adopted, and whether our current complete and green streets ordinance is sufficient to get us closer to that goal. So I would like to, again, continue working with the administration on what exactly that looks like. And then I don't know, again, if this is a legislative fix or not, but something around restarting a neighborhood traffic calming program. There is an existing program on the books, and I'm not sure if that was initiated legislatively or not by the previous administration. There would at least be a necessary budget allocation for that. So I think we can talk more about that. A lot of these things would come up in the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting, so I'm excited to continue the conversation there. And then the last one was around, Parks and Rec broadly. So there's an upcoming community conversation around the Parks, Recreation and Open Space Master Plan. We'll be getting the report of that sometime in the next few months, and then we'll be having conversations around how we actually pass and ideally implement some of that.
Back to the traffic calming, I know it was our policy under the previous administration that, you know, you had to get a certain number of people to sign off on, you know, to get a traffic calming device on your street. I don't think we use that anymore, but could you, Mayor, could you get us some type of inventory about what is even available, you know, for traffic calming? Because I think before we kind of like, you know, look at it legislatively, let's just see what's there. Because again, I will say, I hear more complaints about speeding on side streets than I hear about anything else. So, I mean.
So when we were looking at this in the safety committee and we knew we needed a residential satisfaction survey based on what we learned from Shaker, and Shaker's like #1 issue is traffic safety. We tried to work with the former administration to try to find ways that we can legislate or fund or find things. But there just didn't seem to be a lot of, I don't wanna say interest, but it was just hard to sort of like raise that up to a higher level than what it's been. I mean, a lot of good people doing a lot of good work in that area, in both the Public Works Department and the Planning Department with future stuff. I think this really needs to go through the committee. I think we should try to work with the administration and then come back to this body with ideas. I mean, I think everyone around this table wants to see more effort put into traffic safety. I don't know what that looks like, but I think we have to work with the administration on that.
Sir President, there was a lot of excitement for that program that you mentioned. And so I'm interested in going back and trying to understand where that is. And then maybe we could come and say, okay, this is what we learned. This is the current state. It would be helpful if there were this legislative change, this budget adjustment, so that we could try to actually implement that.
You know, I think it would be nice if it wasn't driven so much by getting 50% of the people on the street to sign a petition, but maybe, you know, placing, I mean, with enough complaints, placing a device that collects data and we just, you know, kind of go off of that as opposed to, you know, giving people a project.
But at least for those people who did take the initiative to collect the signatures on their streets, understanding where they're at in the queue and what we might be able to do, so we can pull together that info and then happy to join committee meeting.
I don't want to poo-poo the people that did the work, I'm just saying.
Lastly, I would just say I'm very excited about all of the work the planning department in conjunction with the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission researching what's known as backyard cottages or ADUs. And I'm excited to see that legislation proposed, continue the conversation on that.
Go ahead.
I have 2 additional things, which they seem unrelated but are related: Cumberland Pool and snow removal. In that Cumberland Pool, obviously, we're gonna need to make some decisions at some point, and the state capital budget is this year, and the mayor and I have talked about potentially exploring how that might benefit a bigger vision for Cumberland Pool and restarting that. So I think that that's something we can't lose sight of while we're dealing with snow removal. And then also I know that Mayor Petras is working really, really hard with Director Klingsdale and her team to figure out what we need to right size our snow removal process and also our leaf pickup that's coming, you know, in 9 months or so. And so I think that we've all talked about a 5-year capital budget. And I wanna raise that now in January so we can work with the administration as we're learning and figuring out what we wanna do for all seasons and all infrastructure and all capital, with an eye towards incorporating that in a 5-year capital budget.
I just want to ask the law director, when you do a 5-year capital budget, when a city does a 5-year capital budget, is that a piece of legislation or does it still a annual budget and you use this document to guide what happens?
I think it's more in the nature of a comprehensive plan, but I can talk with the acting finance director about that and we can provide a more firm response.
Sure.
In other words, a comprehensive plan as opposed to a piece of legislation.
Right, and then the budgeting comes from the plan.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead. The yearly budget, yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's a whole lot of components to that. So it's a 5-year forecast, really. I mean, and a lot of cities do it. and I don't think it's necessarily something you would legislate, but it's a best practice. And I think there's soon to be a new finance director, one would assume, and interviewing people I'm aware of, and I'm hopeful it gets on that person's radar. The capital piece to it is a little bit different. A lot of people would hire an outside firm to kind of come in and tell them what their capital needs are. And generally build out a capital budget based on that. And it's gotta get on someone's radar, and I assume it's finance, and I assume finance is backed up and it's not something that they can digest right now. But I mean, I'm hopeful. I mean, I think when we do meet as a council, I think we wanna work with the administration on some expectations. Instead of having these fuzzy things. I mean, this is something we talked about last year, and maybe the budget cycle before that, it was like a good idea, never quite happened. How can we start accepting some of these best practices and all come into agreement on when we can get it done?
And one thing I would encourage all council people to do, and we did this last year, was send our budget ideas all year, I mean, not all year, but up until we actually are working on a budget to Addie, so that she can keep them under each one of our names, and that way, when it comes to budget season, we'll have spoken. I mean, certainly we trust the mayor and the directors will put together a budget that, but we still may see things that maybe the administration doesn't see. Who else had their hand up? Okay, we do have one presentation coming up from, yes.
Would Addie mind putting together your notes and sending out this list to everybody so we can see what we have lined up for our expectations?
Yeah, and
aspirations, sorry.
I didn't bring up short-term rental, there are some other things that are not, I know, but there are some other things that have not been mentioned today that I wouldn't call them urgent, but it's like, it's definitely time to get them moving.
Mr. President, as a reminder, Director Klingskill made an effort to attend this meeting, so if there are folks who have questions about the snow removal, she is available to answer those.
Yes,
Just a quick question. I know that the city of Cleveland went to GPS in their trucks, so they were mapping streets, and we would know what streets have been done and what streets remain to be done. Do we have that capability? And if not, is there any thought to adding that to our vehicles?
We're working on that now. We have telematics on all of our trucks, so we're working on implementing software so we'll be able to track where all of our trucks are plowed.
And is that information that at some point we will be able to make available to the residents if they go to our website?
Possibly.
I guess I should have looked at the mayor to ask all that.
Go ahead.
I know a lot of work was done by your department over the weekend. You guys coordinated getting salt, you borrowed salt from other cities. There was a lot of work that you guys did. And I think it's helpful that us and the residents know the level of effort that it takes and some of the challenges that are facing the department regarding snow removal. I'd love to be able to ask questions, but I'm not sure I even know what questions to ask. I would love to be able to hear a short presentation. Nothing glorious. Just something maybe you would have already chatted with the mayor and that you could share with us. Not now, but maybe when you've had maybe 5 or 10 minutes to just kind of like get your thoughts together, just to kind of go over the trials and tribulations of getting this work done. I know it's a lot of work that you guys do. And it's like, I know people are there at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I'd love to hear those stories. And I think the residents would really appreciate the work if they sort of knew really behind the curtain, really all this crazy stuff you guys have to do to prepare for a storm.
I can give you a brief overview of this last event if that would be helpful to you. Maybe preparing a presentation for sometime later, but it's going to be snowing. We're going to get a lot of snow for the rest of the month, and this may help give you guys some insight into what we go through just performing snow removal in the city. If that'll be helpful.
I think it's up to the people that are running the meeting to determine if that's, if we have time.
Could be, and we will, let us know so we can set aside time for that.
So do you wanna hear about the last event or you wanna wait?
We don't have time to hear about that now, just because we've got 10 minutes and we have another presentation.
Okay.
Now, however, and this is up to the mayor, we could, if you were willing to stay, we could do it at the meeting, but at the regular meeting, but
we could prepare something for the future if you'd like, and then also we're having conversations about our current operations and how we might be able to improve them. And I think that there's going to be a list of very specific things that we're going to do to improve it. And so I'm happy to, in the near future, present that list to council and to the public.
Thank you. We have two people from Future Heights here that are gonna talk about the Music Hop, and give a report from last year and talk about a proposal they have for this year.
Should we come up?
Yes, please. And so we have Lee Chilcote, the Executive Director, and Brenda Bailey, the Office Manager. Operations Manager.
I'll just talk briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Brenda, who really was the brains and the muscle behind the hop this year. So the Heights Music Hop is an annual event. We're in our 13th year this year, which is it's one of the most vibrant, exciting events in Cleveland Heights. I think it brings thousands of people out to our commercial districts. This year, as you know from attending, it was a weekend-long event. We had Cedar Fairmount on Friday, the Cedar Lee District, and also Noble on Saturday, and then we had Coventry on Sunday. And what we want to do is we hire dozens of local bands, many from Cleveland Heights, and what we want to do this year is expand the Heights Music Hop to make it even more successful and to include more of our business districts and more of our community. So I'll turn it over to Brenda to talk about the concept for the new hop.
So in the afterglow of a very successful hop, when everyone was just kind of high from that whole community vibe that was created and the perfect weather, I started thinking about the fact that we've been having part of the Music Hop in the Noble neighborhood for a while now. It's a one-act thing early in the morning on the Saturday. And as most of you know, the Noble businesses are kind of coalescing and forming an organization. And the same is happening on Taylor Road. They have a new merchant association. And so these are opportunities that A, we need to take advantage of. B, we need to make sure that everybody in every neighborhood knows that we want them to have a good time and celebrate what's good about their commercial district, their neighborhood, et cetera. So I began to envision a series of Music Hop events so that we could focus on Cedar Lee in May, and we could focus on Taylor Road in June, and so on and so on. And that way we would have, our citizens wouldn't have to choose where to go. By the time you get to the end of a weekend, you're tired, the kids are tired, you don't really wanna go to another event, but you wanna support that district. So this would accommodate that. I also feel like it opens the door for some better sponsorships. If we're visible throughout the year, we may be able to get some organizations or companies sign on to co-sponsor the Music Hop with us and you, the city. So because we want to expand and because we are a small staff, in managing the hop, we've come out in the black. I'm extremely frugal, as some of you know, and so we did a very good job at managing our budget. But if we're gonna add more dates and more places and more bands, then we're gonna have to find additional funding for that. So we are asking the city to increase its sponsorship. For the past 2 years, we've received $7,500 from the city. We'd like to up that. We're asking for $30,000. Theoretically, 5 business districts, that's $6,000 each. Our biggest weakness, as I started to say, is manpower. So we would really like to be able to hire a Music Hop manager or assistant manager or whatever that might look like. I spent over 300 hours planning this year's event, and so we need to divide that up a little bit.
How many events would that be?
So we're looking at 5. We also, I'll just add very quickly, we're also exploring partnerships. I'm in discussions right now with the Cleveland Blues Society to have a co-hosted event together at a venue in Cleveland Heights. No lifting for us, but just keeping our brand out there in the community, like I said, throughout the year.
Yes.
This might be a question for the mayor or finance director, the interim finance director. Where is this money being requested from? Because we had the question,
What fund?
what fund, but also whose authority is that fund? Because I think we had the question of where this community money is coming from. And I just want to clarify that as we sit here.
Is this not from an events fund?
This wasn't budgeted.
Yeah, we have an events fund budgeted this year in which, and we have a new events coordinator who will, in the very near future be looking at allocations across, the calendar year around events that we sponsor or that we host. But then there is also we also integrate events that we participate in or sponsor or support in some way. And that's just I think we're in the early stages of that conversation.
So this wasn't included in the budget, but that's not to say that there isn't somewhere else that it could come from. I think that the finance department would have to take a look and make some recommendations.
Well, are you asking where the money came from before?
I'm asking a core question, which is how do we, as a city, allocate external programmatic funds and external sponsorship funds? Because, and I should have prefaced this by saying, I love the Heights Music Hop, and this isn't about the Heights Music Hop, this is about the policy question, because the Heights Music Hop has been funded from us before, but are we now in a position, are we essentially a grant maker, right? For programs, are we a grant maker for events? This is something I think we need to figure out.
Well, we did decide that this would go to that question would go to the finance committee and go ahead.
And I would like to suggest that because this is a lot of money, and what is our budget that we finally did decide on to put into communications for events? Do you have a number on that?
There is a small budget for communications for events, but the events budget comes out of the Parks and Rec department, a very specific fund allocated through Parks and Rec.
Do you remember how much that
I
was?
believe it's 150. I believe that was what was approved for this year.
But most of that's already accounted for though, right? Parks and Rec? Yeah.
No, it's separate from Parks and Rec. It's really specifically for events that the event coordinator would put on throughout the year, and we're gonna be in conversation, our departments with the mayor around what sorts of events we wanna put on.
Okay, so that's in the works as well.
That's in the works, yes.
But because we're having this policy discussion in the finance committee, I would like to suggest that we move this proposal to that as well for consideration. I appreciate the fact that you did a report back. Beautiful, we don't get that all the time. And I appreciate all the work you put into it, but we are going through policy realignment, so to speak. And I don't know if it's on the agenda for the 26th or not.
I was just gonna ask Gaddy if we could just add that as an item.
Yeah.
And give that consideration. I mean, this wouldn't be necessarily for your item, that's just more of our item. But just as far as timing, when would you need an answer for this?
Well, the merchants on Cedar Lee have really expressed a desire to move their event to the spring. It's the introduction of patio season. Currently, we're in the fall. All their major events fall within 6 weeks in the fall. And one of the beautiful aspects of that stretch is all of the business patios. And they wanna kind of promote those in the spring so people will come back over and over again. So,
As opposed to having it at the end of the season
yeah.
when it's over.
So that would be our only crunch. We have project plans, we would just have to modify them. But I believe Carolyn is really keen on doing the hop on Cedar Lee in May.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question. Sustainability of this funding, would you be looking for it every year from the city?
No, ideally, we would be able to attract, like I said, sponsors. I really pushed to build some sponsorships this past year for the first time. We got a few cool things, not very much money. We got 100 kazoos donated. But that's a large part of my desire to move this into a series so that we can attract a bigger sponsor who would take the place of this extra funding from the city. Yes.
Is the idea that it would be a 3-day event in each district, or you would have like
It would
just
be
a
a 1
Saturday?
day. Yeah.
Okay.
It's whatever day that community was most interested in having it. I know Coventry feels like Sunday, they're just sort of the leftover, everybody's tired, nobody comes. So they wanna have a Friday night or a
There'd be a
Saturday
weekend
night.
allocated, and that business district could decide how
Or if they
they
had a
want.
Sunday, it would just be, it wouldn't be at the end of a,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
cause they
So-
like the family day kind of time, I don't know.
Getting that individual neighborhood input and so that we can tailor things to meet whatever that community wants to see in a music hop, that's kind of the idea.
But I just wanna say Brenda's very modest that, you know, and this ending up in the black, this is after being tens of thousands of dollars in the red, you know, it's not, I mean, this was a major shift in you know, stewardship, and you guys did a fantastic job. I mean, last year was just a masterpiece, really.
It was excellent. It was
Unfortunately, do we have one more thing?
No, I just wanted to answer
No,
Councilwoman
please.
Cohen's question. Historically, since I've been here, these type of items have been funded through the general funds. And
so not a specific
no.
fund interest. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, it is 7:32 and this meeting is adjourned.